What would you do if you didn't have a home? The right to shelter is an establishment, unreliable human right, entailing that no person can be denied a sustainable living situation, which includes necessities such as food, clothing, medical care, and protection. There are around 7 billion people on Earth, and though most of us will find these rights fulfilled, there are approximately 65 million people who don't. A large majority of these people are refugees, who are people who have been forced to leave their country in order to escape persecution. In Syria, there are around 11 million people who don't have been forced to leave their homes due to the danger that the country's civil war has put them in. In 1970, Hafez al-Assad took power after Syria's tumultuous power struggling with France, Israel, Egypt, and more. A member of the Alawites, the well-fearing ethnic minority of Syria, which ruled over the minority. His presidency was the first stable government Syria had ever had. However, he established a government of censorship, low tolerance for opposition, and an extremely oppositive regime. Hafez al-Assad's presidential term only ended after his death in 2000, which in turn put his son, Bashar al-Assad, in the oppressive dictatorial opposition previously held by his father. Tensions with Syria were high, as ethnic groups fought, dissatisfaction with the government increased, and the economy grew worse. In 2011, a group of teens were arrested and tortured after making graffiti in the nation. That in the same fashion as the Arab Spring, the Syrian dictatorship will soon fall. People took the streets in peaceful protest, but the Syrian government fought this opposition with violence, killing dozens. On March 15, 2010, war was officially declared, as several groups formed within Syria. Previous government, violently fighting opposition of Bashar al-Assad's rules. There are Kurdish forces made out of members of the Kurdish ethnic group who take up 10% of the Syrian population, which in an army of 100,000. They ultimately desired the establishment of Kurdish state after group have formed. Helpful is in fighting ISIS. Other opposition groups, such as the Jaish al-Fatah, advantage of the situation of Syria to put their oppressive ideas under the opposition of Islam. Let's get one thing straight. ISIS, it's not Islam. Islam is a religion that promotes peace, and at its very core, ISIS goes against everything that the faith of Islam calls for. ISIS has carried around several acts of terrorism, both extremely and internationally, including bombings, public execution, kidnappings, and more. This violence, as well as danger employment by the other opposition groups, have forced 5 million Syrian refugees to flee their country, and 6.3 million Syrians to leave their homes and live as internationally displaced people. Refugees flee to several countries. There are 1.1 million refugees in Europe, 2.9 million Syrian refugees in Turkey, 650,000 in Jordan, 240,000 in Iraq, 120 in Egypt, and 1 million in Lebanon. Within these countries, 9% of refugees live in camps, which are largely overpopulated, underfortunate, and vulnerable to attacks. The people living in these camps often don't have food, clothing, or health service. Syrian refugees who had been waiting for years to gain a permit to come to the United States are now unable to due to the recent legislation passed by the US government, prohibiting members of certain countries from coming to America. This travel ban gives citizens of certain predominantly Muslim countries from entering the United States unless they have a credible claims of bona fide relation with entirely, like a school or job, or a person living in the US, such as a spouse. Syrian refugees are often violated in the press due to the violence associated with the Syrian civil war, and groups like ISIS. However, these people are just like us. They seek their protection that their own countries promised to them but fail to fulfill. So what can you do? First of all, You could fight the xenophobia and Islamophobia that is being associated with refugees. You can get involved with several organizations, such as Refugees Welcome, UNICEF, UNIHCR, and more. You can continue to advocate for refugees' rights because, after all, they only seek at home. Thank you.